Whether the town of Manchester should acquire and upgrade part of an existing 3-mile-long trail extending from Manchester Elementary Middle School to North Road could be a decision heading for the warning for next March's annual town meeting. The rail trail, as it's known, since it follows the path of a former railroad line that was built in the early 1900s to haul marble quarried in Dorset to the former railroad station in Manchester, is currently open and owned by a group of hiking and cycling enthusiasts. Having done a lot of work to improve the trail, and following an advisory vote that was taken at the 2016 Manchester Town Meeting, which gave a green light to town officials to begin estimating the costs for further improvements and acquisition, the current owners of the trail are hoping the town will take the next step and acquire it and continue improving it. That would add a needed trail for outdoor recreation that would have numerous quality-of-life benefits, they say. Rough cost estimates presented at the Select Board meeting on November 21st showed two options, ranging from about $1.3 million to about $1.4 million, with most of that paid for through federal funding. The initial estimates are potentially on the high end, and the eventual costs could be lower. The main difference between the two options would be whether the path would be paved or not. The town and its taxpayers would need to pick up about 10 to 20% of that, or approximately $100,000. That point prompted some discussion at the Select Board meeting, as well as how the trail would impact neighboring property owners.
My feeling is that this is a capital-intensive program, that at this stage, the town we're trying to keep the taxes low, and to take this kind of an obligation on, I don't know what kind of interest rates you're going to have 2-3 years from now when you try to get a loan or whatever you're going to do. And so I think it's something that that in combination with the increased maintenance costs are going to make this cost prohibitive.
Other issues have been raised by local and abutting property owners, some of whom are not keen to see a walking and biking path coming through near their backyards. Beyond the privacy issue, there have been concerns expressed about recreational drug use by users of the trail, for example, or whether this is an unnecessary luxury for the town at this time.
At least 3,500 feet of this rail trail is somebody's backyard or somebody's front yard. And I think the situation is it's small, it's incredibly invasive to the people around it. There are as many reports out there saying property values go down as go up, crime goes up as go down. So I think it depends on where you take your information from. But I think there's a lot of merit to looking into this a lot closer.
Supporters of the trail argue that hiking and biking trails raise real estate values and would attract more visitors and their business to the town. Robin Werner, one of the members of the limited liability corporation that currently owns the railbed and the existing trail, has been working to make the trail a reality for several years. He spoke of the potential benefits the trail offered in a separate interview.
Well, I think for local people, it'll be an outstanding opportunity to recreate, to exercise. We don't have another trail in the area that's as nice. This is an extension of an existing trail. It's an extension of the recreation trail that already exists. And it's also a possible use for transportation for people who are heading out towards Dorset. I think it'll attract young people to the town, which has been a discussion lately, because younger people today are certainly looking for this kind of thing. I think the question that people ask is no longer, do you have a trail? The question today is, where is your trail? And I think it'll help with tourists. Tourists come in town. Right now, the only place they have to go otherwise is the Equinox Preservation, and that's pretty well crowded. So I think this will be a real asset to the town.
Town manager John O'Keefe said his research showed the safety concerns, particularly if the town owned it and could enforce rules and regulations on its use, were manageable, and that the trail opened up other possibilities and opportunities as well.
It's a long-standing concern, not just here in Manchester, but in other areas, that bike trails bring with it an element of crime. I really haven't seen that from a statistical standpoint. I was involved in a bunch of bike trails down in Massachusetts, and there were concerns that people would ride their bikes out into the suburbs and rob houses, and you just don't see that happening. If the town was to take it over, we would have some strict ordinances as far as sunset, sunrise, dogs, and other things like that, limiting vehicle traffic on the path. So I think that's important. There are some public safety concerns that I think we could address probably better than a private landowner. When you look at it from the perspective of homes along that corridor, somebody could actually go to MEMS. The student could go to MEMS like a 6th, 7th, 8th grader on their bike, really only crossing Mount Aeolus, which is a very, very low traffic roadway, and then going through the rink, going through the rec park, and then through MEMS. And you'd have to cross that little area where the buses come into MEMS, but you really have very minimal crossings for a child to ride their bike from their house to MEMS to go to school.
The Select Board did not come to a final decision on whether to acquire the trail or not as a public town-owned property or leave it as a privately owned one. It may be one of the questions voters will get to decide at March's town meeting. For the GNet TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.